Welcome everyone. I am so glad that you could join me for episode 4 of A General Good Time. I want to welcome each and every one of you into this space, and I'm beyond excited and grateful to have you all present in this moment with me. With that being said, I wanted to introduce this week's topic. As the title suggests, this is more of a low-key episode. Haha, get it? Because it's lo-fi hip-hop? Anyways, as I briefly sing my praises for lo-fi hip-hop while simultaneously attempting to trace some of the origins, albeit not as successfully. So some of y'all may have already probably been familiar with this piece if you are Facebook friends with me. I was using the Notes app function to sing my praises because this was originally published in September 15th, 2020, so roughly a year ago, more than a year ago now, when we were during the pandemic, and we're still in a pandemic, but now I think it's a little bit more, back to standard practice, I would say, at least for some folks. Unfortunately, capitalism never stops and people have to work. So anyways, I'm going to just now kind of transition that piece because I think the Notes app is no longer working, and just use this as a way to just sing my praises on this podcast. So if there's a bit of deja vu, I apologize in advance, but thank you for listening anyways. So yeah, as you all may know by now, I love doing random shit that is not productive in the slightest and giving my unsolicited advice and opinions. Oh wow. I promise I'm not proud of this at all. Rather, what I want to maybe achieve and maybe archive is to look back on due to my horrendous memory and constant fix for Throwback Thursdays on the daily and hashtag nostalgia for the good old days. Wow. Transitioning the script from a piece into like an audio thing, I'm realizing now is it's not as smooth, so bear with me. But anyway, wow, I'm so dramatic. I was always addressing an audience in my mind. Look at me. So what this is, you may ask, given the title, I'm going to reveal my basic and sort of relatable TM obsession with lo-fi hip-hop. Beats to study, sleep, chill, and relax to. I feel like at this point, it becomes mainstream enough that Will Smith made his own mix. No, seriously, it's on YouTube and it's not bad at all, actually. Actually go listen to it. It's not that bad. On the surface, it may seem kind of like a random niche thing that you stumble upon, and for some people that may be the case. But for other seasoned listeners, you may know the history behind this and just how deep the rabbit hole goes. So there's a couple of works that I'm going to cite that I'll make sure to put the link to, but if you're interested, I highly recommend checking out on YouTube. Actually, there's a couple of videos exploring the topic really well, specifically citing influences such as Nujabes, which is a Japanese, or Nuhabes, which is a Japanese composer, producer, and DJ who's famous for his works on the soundtrack of the classic anime Samurai Champloo, which came out in 2005. So there's a Genius News article that kind of talks about his influence specifically, and then I would say his influence specifically in the 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s. And then there's another video that describes the multi-genre origins of the history of lo-fi, and I really want to emphasize that it's rooted in Black culture, and I don't want to overlook or forget that point. So I highly recommend checking out the video by the Multimex. So I apologize in advance with these pronunciations. I hope I'm pronouncing everyone's names correctly, but this video is a mini deep dive into just the origins and the multi-genre history. So again, highly recommend, and I also recommend checking out some of these articles. So the articles do a decent job exploring the significance of this, on the surface seemingly simple trend by explaining the evolution of specific aesthetics. So particularly Victoria, she wrote an article basically exploring lo-fi hip-hop, and then this was part 1 of her article going from so the article is titled An Exploration of Lo-Fi Hip-Hop Part 1 from Shoegaze and Dreampop to Vaporwave. So in this article, basically she just kind of goes through her own experience, entering the world of lo-fi hip-hop, which is very similar to many of ours, and just kind of stumbling upon that, and then just kind of breaking down what lo-fi is on a technical level and then kind of going through some of the origins. And so I'm going to cite just one quote from her article where she says, on a technical level, lo-fi comes from low fidelity. Fidelity generally means faithfulness or loyalty to something, but in the auditory context, fidelity means how accurately sound is reproduced. Think of listening to a song on an old record from the 20s versus a song streaming on Spotify from your smartphone. Your smartphone has a higher fidelity, or so you'd hope, so that more accurately the medium reproduces the sound, the higher its fidelity. Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting portion, so make sure to check out these creators. There's also a blog from the Next Wave Chicago, basically deals with the author's personal history in the world of lo-fi hip-hop and just talking about the history of that. I also just recommend checking out these articles if you're doing this. Anyways, again, you might ask me, why am I doing this? And honestly, I wish I could give you a solid, deep explanation, but I don't really have one other than personal reasons, which simply comes down to the sense of peace and relaxation lo-fi brings me. So if I'm gonna be quite honest, I'm kind of shallow. I don't think that that's like necessarily something I should be proud of. I don't know if my tone of voice is misleading, but in terms of shallow, what I mean to say is that I like aesthetics, you know, I like things that catches my eye. I like pretty things. I think this is like, you know, I don't want to say this is universal, but I would like to say I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way. And so even though for lo-fi, I'm not gonna lie, it was like the thumbnails and like the art and like the kind of interesting titles and the aesthetic really is mainly what drew me in. But honestly, the supportive community, no, seriously, like it's the most positive like comments I've ever seen on like in a YouTube comment section ever, that like really made me stay. Like the amount of like encouragement and also just people sharing their own experiences and just, you know, there's even poetry on there. Like it's really amazing. So I definitely recommend, at least if you've ever seen any lo-fi video that actually has comments on, like, you know, definitely check it out. It's really cool. Another thing that lo-fi introduced me to, which I'm so grateful, is a subgenre of 1980s Tokyo pop music, which was heavily inspired by the States, called city pop, which is explained much better here via this website link that I'm gonna link to, basically by Vaporwave, which essentially breaks down much better than I can what city pop is. And just, I can only tell you basically in my experience, I felt a lot of nostalgia and like melancholy when I was listening to the tracks, and like the sense of joy. Like I feel like you can't tell me that I wasn't an 80s baby and that I was not living in Tokyo, you know what I mean? Like it was like I like deluded myself into feeling like I was really there because of just the music and like the instrumentals and like just the joy that it really brings to me. So I highly recommend that in that kind of niche, you know, on your lo-fi journey, that if you've ever stumbled upon like city pop or like warm nights in Tokyo or any sort of titles like that, like highly recommend checking it out. It's such a great genre in it of itself that also fits the lo-fi, shoegaze, vaporwave aesthetic. So there's that. In this portion, I guess I wanted to preface that it's still quarantine. So I know that when I originally published this, it was like back in September. So it's still quarantine, and for folks, it may be an isolating and lonely time. And I get that, for real. Like I have had ample time to sit with my thoughts, and it hasn't been the most pleasant experience. But honestly, I'm really happy to say that the small moments of peace I have experienced come from at least the 30 minutes daily that I have to unwind, to slow down and chill out. So if you all want to, of course, it's completely optional. I have also included my own personal playlist for lo-fi hip hop on YouTube. So if there's a space that you want to get started to, please check that out if you have time. But if you have made it this far, thank you so much. You are a real one. And if you have, you know, if you want to have a listening party, I'm serious. Like I've always wanted to do listening parties, so I put a pin in that, and hopefully please hit me up, and I'm down to celebrate the mutual love and appreciation. So I hope you all still stay safe and healthy during this time, and happy listening. We have reached the end of this week's podcast episode. I hope you all have enjoyed it, and if you do, please consider liking, following, and sharing this as it is much appreciated. If you have any topic ideas or suggestions, please feel free to email me at a general good time podcast at gmail.com, as I check that regularly and would love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, I hope you all had a good time and a great rest of your week.